Hello everyone, hope you're doing well. One of the great things about this last update was a bunch of additions that have come to the UI and also a bunch of changes that have come to graphics, and this has been really fantastic to see. The fact that War Thunder keeps on adding vehicles over time is already something that is kind of crazy. The fact that they can just continuously pump out content at the rate that they do. I don't think there's a single game out there that does as much as Gaijin does for War Thunder. But the other part, which I find fascinating, is the graphical upgrades that have happened over time. And at some point, what I'll do, probably next year, we'll have a look at what War Thunder used to look like, where everything was brown or grey or green, and then it was transformed into what we have now, where you have a lot more bright colours, you have a lot more kind of distinction, you have a lot more fidelity, and all of this stuff. But as the train continues to go along the rails, there is always more improvement that is worth looking at. And for me, I thought in this video, we would talk about certain elements that I personally would like to see over the next year, or even over the next update. Remember, since this update came out pretty late, we're probably pretty close to dev season once again for the next update, which comes out usually just before Christmas, or that is the 25th of December. So, in this video, we'll go through a bunch of those things that I would like to see, and also, if you could give me some thoughts on what you would like to see, that would be wonderful, because for me, one of the great things about doing content is sharing ideas and also discussing them, and hopefully we can grow and get more stuff going around. So make sure to use the comment section, because this type of topic I'm super interested in, and the part of the game which I feel like has the highest growth area compared to some of the other ones. The first thing I would love to see in the game is separate volume presets. Now, what do I mean by this? In War Thunder, they have added way more sound options compared to what was there before, but there is a problem. The game modes themselves require different sets of volumes. So for example, if I am playing naval, for example, I don't want the gunfire to be very high, and I don't want enemy gunfire to be too high either, because it's incredibly loud. But in something like ground, I do want those to be quite high, because then I can work out what is going on in terms of the battlefield. So having different volume presets for air, ground, and naval means that I could tailor my volume experience to each of the game modes, where the problem right now with how it's set up is I have to tailor it to one game mode and then basically just move the main volume slider up and down to work out what I actually want to hear. And this is a problem because obviously now we have certain options which are specifically designed for air. We have certain options which work better in something like ground but not naval, so it just makes sense to have a preset for each of the different game modes instead of having to juggle one volume slider for everything. Now for me, in terms of how the game is set up and in terms of, the different game modes, I feel like most people do play more than one. I might be wrong about that. Maybe most people do only play one. But since we've had a bunch of changes over the last period of time which have favored minority percentages of people who play specific things, this is another thing that should be focused on, even if it is a minority percentage, which I don't think it is. I think the vast majority of people at least try different game modes more. And this would help people get into different game modes, so whenever they boot up, let's say, naval, they don't get their head blown off. Or whenever they start playing air, they don't not hear specific things because of the fact that their volumes are set to ground. The other part is repair priority. This is something that I feel has been around and thought about for a while, but for me, I think there's kind of a simple solution to it. What you do is you just have a set of options in ground battle settings and naval battle settings, and it basically goes, what do you want to repair first? What do you want to repair second? So on and so forth until you get to the end. So the idea is your crew focuses or prioritizes fixing specific things first over others, whether it's the gun, whether it's engines, whether it's something like a transmission or a cannon breach. The idea is you can tailor what is repaired first so you can fight back quicker and therefore tailor the experience to you. We've all been in those situations where you have, like, let's say a track knocked out, then you have, like, I don't know, a turret ring knocked out, and then you also have something like a transmission knocked out, and you would want the priority to be the turret ring, so therefore you can get the gun firing, so you can at least defend yourself in that situation. But what ends up happening quite a lot of the time is they either get all repaired at the same time, or they get repaired within a few seconds of each other, and therefore it doesn't really make too much of a difference what you decide to repair first. And obviously there is already a set of priorities in the game itself on what is supposed to be repaired first, so why not just give that to the player? Why not just make it so therefore they can choose the outcome of this instead of it being standardized for everybody? There are certain things in War Thunder that I think should be standardized just based on a balance perspective, but this part is definitely a player experience perspective because of the fact that certain players have different playstyles, and therefore because they have different playstyles, they can tailor it to their experience. And I think that's very important to do, especially in ground, but also in naval, because naval is very similar in terms of what you want to get going when, you know, you're fighting specific enemies. Another part which I think would be super useful just to kind of tag on to this idea, giving the player a bit more ownership in battles, is the idea of selecting rounds to load. So there's always that debate about we should be able to kind of eject rounds out of the barrel, or out of the breech, sorry, before you load another one. So if you have the wrong round loaded, you should be able to load another one instead of having to fire that round. Now, this is something that has been debated for a long time. The major reason why it hasn't been implemented is because of a lot of vehicles don't have access to that in real life from the Second World War era and even past the Second World War era. So, or it's unsafe to do so to unload a round out of a breech. So the idea is Gaijin didn't want to add it because it would only be for specific vehicles and it would obviously need extra time. Well, what if you made it so it was for every vehicle and you could have a toggle on and off option in, once again, the options, where it's like you have to tell the loader to load the round. So basically, instead of you automatically loading whatever round is selected, you can sit there and you have to press the specific round that you want loaded at that time. So this means that a person who wants to have a specific round loaded, they can wait for that situation, work out the situation, and start the loading straight away. Whereas a person who just wants to keep the game going as it is already going, they don't have to do that. They can just leave it as it is. And I think that is perfect because it gives both sides what they want, where you have control over what you loaded, and then also you have control over the automatic loading system for yourself. So why not just do that? For the profile as well, this is another part which I feel like is really important. The profile is very anemic at the moment. Like the new one is incredibly anemic, so there has to be a push towards bringing back all of the old features to this new eye. So basically a new lick of paint as that goes. Something that was very important to me was the amount of vehicles that were researched and also the amount of vehicles that were spaded per nation. This is something that is quite hard to find now because they've just removed it from the profile. I think in general that was kind of a mark of, hey, look, this person plays a bunch of different nations. That's really cool. Or now you have to go to the website and actually check the website and how many different vehicles of each nations that they play, or you go through the service record, and sometimes it literally will take you years to go through all of that stuff. So for me personally, when I look at a lot of these things, I think it would be nice to add in all of the old elements, and hopefully they do that by next update, because we're already seeing a problem with the new profile, and that's something that we talked about yesterday, but also you can kind of see it going on pretty, substantially over, and it's going to continue to go over the next few weeks. The profile in-game, even though there wasn't a lot of customization, it's an extension of the player. Right? It's an extension of your life in the game, if you want to see it like that. And the problem with taking that away and changing it, people feel offended by that because you have removed something that was standard and you have changed it without being even able to vote on it or without being able to do anything with it, right? Only kind of give suggestions. And if you take something and you remove a bunch of stuff from it and you don't add things in which actually replace that stuff or do that stuff but in a different way, then you kind of have just taken away stuff that people like and you haven't added anything that they like. So that's the situation we have right now, and that's no good. So might be worth, concentrating on that, because that seems to be the stick that people are using to go after the game right now. That is kind of the hot topic, and once again, I can't blame people, because whenever something is removed, you need to replace it with something, and this replacement is nowhere near the standard of what people had before. The other one, which would be really cool, is the ability to see old replays in the game. So if you didn't know, whenever a new update comes out, not just like a main update, but even sometimes a minor update, it basically corrupts all of the older files, and, well, not corrupts, but they're just not compatible with the new system, so you can't play them. And that sucks, because some people have like replays from years ago, which would be really cool to see, but there is no way of accessing those old versions of the game to be able to actually play them. And that's one thing that World of Tanks does really well, where you can see replays from years ago, even though the game is completely different, and you can kind of load them up and see what things used to be like. I would love to see that in War Thunder. I don't really want a War Thunder kind of like Legacy Edition or a War Thunder Classic Edition. You know how World of Warcraft did that Classic Edition? Because with World of Warcraft, there is a real inkling for nostalgia, because the game has changed so much, and it's also very story driven, and people want to experience what they did at a younger age, or people want to experience or help other people experience what they went through so they can understand how it was for them, which is really cool. It's something that's awesome. In War Thunder, you don't really have that, because you don't have like these big campaigns. You don't have these expansive, crazy setups. Instead, you just have, you play the game, you research the vehicles, and then the maps change. You don't have this grandiose story. The plot of War Thunder is the player, not the actual game. So it would still be really cool to see old replays to kind of show what the game was like, and also just show, what some of the matchmaking used to be like and all of that. But at the same time, the fact is we can't right now, and that just makes me really sad. So hopefully at some point they can figure out a way of doing that. Another simple thing is the ability to compare vehicles. I know they've added some things in the game to be able to do that. There's some apps out there which can technically do it, but it's not the same. It would be nice if in War Thunder you could literally just click a vehicle and click compare on it, and then you click another vehicle, and there you go. You have a look at both of them side to side, and then you can use like the armor view on both of them, the X-ray on both of them, and then also have a look at all the stats, and even maybe the player stats that would be attached to that. I think in general that would be really cool to see from these vehicles. Unfortunately, we don't have that, but maybe in the future we could. Also, just the exchanging of old kind of items. This is something they talked about in the good old roadmap, but they haven't implemented yet. The idea of being able to exchange a lot of your inventory items, but yeah, they haven't added it. Just thought I'd remind people that that was in the roadmap, because it seems like everybody's forgotten about it. Maybe we'll get it by December. Who knows? Only 3 months late. And then the last one, which I think would be really cool. We've talked about some like Hangar editions in other videos, but this one for me would be pretty awesome. Imagine if you're in a squad, okay? Imagine if you're in a squad and you can see the vehicles that people are taking in the hangar for that squad. Now, it could be like just one of the vehicles in the lineup if you're talking about ground or naval. Maybe if it's aviation and you're playing like aerialistic, you could see the vehicle that they're playing. But it would just be really cool, because it would give you a sense of you're actually squadding up, you're actually going to battle together, you're actually going out on an operation, and it would give you an inkling on what they're going to bring. Because, of course, one of the problems with, these types of things is sometimes people can meme on others and kind of bring them into little areas where they shouldn't be. But for me, I think that would be really cool. Once again, another area to kind of improve the squad slash squadron type of things, which is something they're obviously trying to work on this year. Another part of the roadmap was easy access to squads, which also hasn't come in, but sometimes a visual aid is much better than anything else. As always, I hope you have a wonderful day, and I'll see you next time. I'd just like to thank GMG Smiley, CD Beans, Chieftain Mike, EMN3 Galaxy, Tulio Pontecorvo, Brendan Quinn, Carrion Crow, Gus Irenicus, Pyman, Wartinder, Teddy, Daniel Stanton, Martinez, B. Young, Ozzy Panzer, Alan Hacker, Liam Shear, Opium Prime, Lafouche, Sem, Aslan, Uncle Bean, and Derek R. for supporting the channel.